Hi, listener. This is From Ideology to Unity, a spiritual journey where we let go of ideological doctrine in favor of meaning, purpose, and unity as a whole. I'm here with Gabriella Flory, who works in quantum healing. She has a lot of interesting things to say, so I hope you find it interesting. Hi, Gabriella. How are you doing?
Hi, Nick. How are you doing?
Pretty good?
It's a beautiful day. It's an
Yeah.
important day.
And pretty interesting times we're living in, eh?
Yeah, it is really, especially this day, whoever thinks, it is a special day for sure.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So
So
what are you working with, Nick? Like what is it that you are like keeping to be important in these days? Like you said that you are a light worker?
yeah. Well, it seems I'm being interviewed now, eh? So,
I just
that's
want to
one
find
way.
out,
Yeah.
like what is the aspect we want to talk about?
Well, that's one way I could describe myself in that. So we're at this time where there's a raising of consciousness worldwide, right? Whether or not people are aware of that necessarily consciously, it's happening. That's my perspective. And I'm into something called the law of one. But there's other ways of putting it. This idea of Buddhism talks about similar sort of ideas. Um, it's the idea of like a reality is fractal, I guess,
Mhm.
and God is also fractal, and we're part of that in a sense as souls. So it's pantheism, a form of pantheism. Anyway, so what interests me about what you're doing is that quantum physics, to me, overlaps a lot with spirituality, and you seem like you know a lot about that and how it interacts with our health, awakening, and how all that fits together. And to me, yet that overlap between science and spirituality is fascinating. And I would like to hear, well, I think people would like to hear what you have to say about it.
Yeah, like this is a fascinating aspect to me also, and of course this is why I am busy with this. But uh, it is really a very interesting question because what people think about spirituality, and I was studying a lot of religions before also, and sciences and architecture. I was working in architectural field for 30 years. But of course we all are struggling, like personally, so everyone is looking for answers for life as it is, and how we can really manage. Like what I see is that people don't really want to solve life, but we want to control in a way that not others but our own lives, and the results we would like to see. So it was very interesting for me this time when we managed to meet, spirituality and quantum physics, and it has met in a way that it is in a computer, and it
Oh,
is called matrix drops computer. And however, the interface which is making the scans on that computer is the person itself. And this is just fascinating. So the inventor is, based on my opinion, and I have a conviction about it, is a genius, because he just got the intuition of the whole system, how it works, and he managed to put it together. So what it means that basically we all can become such a spiritual person, like in earlier ages, like monks were, in 30, 40, 50 years of practice, they managed to tap into the 0 point field, what we call, scientifically. And that's the place where all, patterns are coming into our world. And this
yeah.
computer can do that, and this is unbelievable joy for me, just using it and learning from it.
So what's different about this computer?
It is basically a scanner, and this scanner is scanning all information patterns we actually being built up just currently.
So our EM field and stuff like that.
Yeah, all the fields, like from the spiritual to the physical, which means that like science, what we call science, but I would love to call this science also, but what we call, originally to be science, they just go that's a lot, it's unbelievable. But they went down to the cognitive fields. That's what they can measure and tap into.
Right.
However, we have a lot of fields which are hidden from this kind of science yet, but this computer is able to tap into even the spiritual field we are being connected with and who we are there.
So according to the designer of this and the theory behind it, what is the nature of this spiritual field?
It is basically how I would call the first is that I wouldn't call it theory, because until the computer was born, let's say like this way, or created, we could call it a theory. However, we are using it for healing, and unbelievable results are showing up. Like even bones are growing back, and that's just, even the inventor was like unbelievably, blessed by these kind of shocking results.
Is it
So
using the
it's
computer?
not it is not a theory. It is a method.
So does the scanner help you to identify how to heal people, or does it actually heal people itself?
It is not healing people. It is like the whole method is basically built up from two phases. The first is the computer, which is detecting your issues, and it is writing out for you. So it's not like there is no mediator between the computer and yourself. And the computer is looking for pattern identification. So it is sensing your patterns, and it is uploaded with all kind of natural patterns, and it is looking for identity between the two patterns. But it is collecting 8 million different kind of options of patterns from you. And then since these uploaded patterns are being coded already, they are coding it into pure water. And when you take that water, that's when the healing is happening.
Okay, so the computer uses water memory to do healing.
Not the computer, but the producer knows how to program water. And what is really specific, I don't know if you heard about Emoto. A lot of people heard about him. He was the one who was freezing water droplets
Yeah.
with different kind of information patterns like love and hate and these kind of
Yeah,
things.
yeah, I heard about that.
Yeah, and he made some pictures about the frozen droplets, and he was proving that the crystal was different. So he said that it is proven that the water is can be like how to say, like programmed
By emotional energy.
patterns. Let's say that creative
Right.
patterns. And these emotions are complex patterns. Now,
Right. Okay.
what happened to him was that whenever this frozen droplet was melting, he lost that information. The information was not available anymore, which means that it is a living entity. Water is a living entity, and it is changing its pattern from time to time.
Huh.
However, what this inventor managed to do is that he can um, he can program water in a way that it is never forgetting it. And I can explain it why, but I don't want to go into real, like, if you want to ask now, I can answer that. But, there are a lot of details I can talk about, so I don't want to go into
I mean,
really.
unless you have a very concise summary, maybe we could leave that till later or something.
It is simple.
Okay.
Water is acting in a way that it is always adjusting to the highest level of information which is available.
Does that include the
It
frequency
means
of
that if you have
information?
a body of water and you add a droplet of water which has a higher level of consciousness, higher level of information,
Right.
then all the body of water will change to that.
So
Because yeah.
does this mean that if you have, for example, if it's got if it has the frequency, the droplet has a frequency of hate in it, right? And then you put in joy into it, it would replace it because it's higher up, higher
Yes,
frequency
that's true.
emotion. But if you put in something lower down, it wouldn't replace it.
Yes, it will if you want to replace it, then it will, because we are creative beings.
Right.
So it is only you who can override it. But if that bottle of water is there and not in you, it means you don't rule it, then it will stay like that forever because there is no higher level of information.
Okay. So in quantum physics, there's the basic idea of superposition, right? How is this related to superposition collapse?
I have to go deeper into this subject. We can talk about it in the other podcast, but I have to go into details with that.
Okay, that's fair enough. That's what I'm wondering because what I will go into briefly.
I'm studying quantum physics and these parts, but I have to go deeper into that so that I
Right.
can relate the two.
The question, yeah, for the listener, what I'm wondering is, I've come across the idea that where quantum physics and spirituality overlaps, there's this idea that instead of it being a random collapse of superposition, then instead it's consciously determined, and that fits in with the whole idea of, in these water experiments, we consciously decide or determine the frequency or the information pattern of the water droplet, right? And that can affect healing.
What I would say is that if you mean like collapsing, like what you mean that, for example, a question is something that is collapsing, um, a superposition. That's what I know about. Like when you have a question, it's not the answer which is collapsing it, but the way of you are asking the question. So if you wanna understand, then what it does is that it is like the computer is tapping into the 0 point field in a way that if we look, there is no time basically, but if we say there is future and there is past, I would say the past was the perfect, creation was the perfect. And then as time is passing, then we are becoming more and more chaotic. But order was there, order was perfect there when we got the idea to create ourselves. That
Yes.
was the creative idea. Now what the computer is doing is that it is sensing what is the aspect that we are being troubled about, and it is tapping back to the 0 point field and giving us the original creative pattern of that aspect of life. And it, okay.
Yeah. I actually understand. So you're saying it's like when we incarnate, this is a spiritual way of putting it. When we incarnate, there's a format for what it is to be human. Or we come in with that, and in our life, we might have, through decisions that affect our health, like bad diet or heavy metals and things like that, they might have impacted our health in certain ways. But this can help us go back to the preset format that's more harmonious. Is that correct?
Yes, it is very correct. And just like that, you just were mentioning heavy metals, and this is a very good aspect we can talk about, and not too long, but it's a very interesting aspect. And I'm just I want to say I don't speak in the name of Matrix Drops or its inventor. It is how I see and understood, the
Yeah.
whole method. And what I see is that when we are talking about the earth, that's a being also. She is a being, let's call her. She has much more elements in her than we have. And she has these elements in a specific creative way. For example, there is no um, iron as it is in the soil, or there is no aluminum in the soil. These kind of heavy metals are being in different bounding, I'm sorry for not using the proper words,
It's
but
all right.
I hope that you understand, like chemical bondage with other materials. And this is how they are being safe, and this is how they are um, supporting creation, in a healthy way. Now, the problem is that everything, all the elements are beings just like us. So they have all the levels of existence just like us. They have emotional patterns, they have relationship patterns, they have soul level, they have a spiritual level. Now, when we are just separating them by force, and by force I mean by electricity, we are separating these elements. These elements are becoming unleashed. And what is really, really dangerous these times, if you just go back in history, you remember that in the history book, they called the different ages with the new materials they started to use, like iron, copper, these ages. And it was because people started to unleash, or they unleashed one specific element from nature. And that element, the spirit of that element has been released. And that changed human behavior very, very fundamentally. But they had like thousands of years to adjust to that.
Is it the energy of it being released
It's not,
more than
it's much more subtle. It's the pattern, which is a creative pattern. It is creating itself.
so the pattern in the divine matrix?
Yes, let's say that. Yeah. It's part of the divine matrix. And maybe there are some beings where, let's say, aluminum is being separated, but in earth, and especially it shouldn't be present in our body at all. That's the first issue, and we can talk about that a lot, because this is why we have heavy metal overload. We cannot get rid of it because we don't have the program, we don't have the idea of how to get rid of it, because it's naturally is not being part of our system. Because everything which is organically being part of our system, we have a way to get rid of.
Okay. So is it a bit like how trans fats damage the human body and heavy metals damage Gaia's body? And in a sense, since we're like cells of Gaia, we are also harmed by the release of heavy metals.
I would say that releasing heavy metals is destroying us worse, like much more than the earth,
Do you think?
like aluminum as an element is being part of the earth originally, but it is not being part of our own system, our own human body system.
Right. That's a whole element to things going on at the moment, like that I didn't know about. And so there's a lot of social disorder going on. And do you feel that psychological, these psychological issues that seem on to be manifesting on a collective level, do you think it's related to things like this that are creating disharmony?
Yeah, I am convinced about that, because if you look at, like, the inventor of this whole method was um, like identifying the spiritual pattern of these elements. These are in the computer. So if you put your hands on the computer, you sit next to the computer, it is telling you what kind of behavioral patterns you have from specific heavy metals. So it's not you. It is the heavy metal acting out in you, by you, because you are its its body, basically. You are manifesting its behavioral or spiritual or soul or emotional patterns
as a whole.
as a whole, as someone who is the ruler of the world, which is your body.
Right. Okay. That's fascinating. So that's how heavy metals fit into it. They have.
Yeah, and sorry for that, or like, I don't want really to interrupt you, but it just came to my mind that heavy metals are having to do a lot with pandemic also, and it is scientific proof. For example, they proved that the present virus, which is around the world, is very much related to cadmium. And cadmium is being used as a geoengineering material, and they are spraying it into the atmosphere. So these are very much related issues, and it is proven. And it is not us who said this, this is science who said this.
Okay. So it that sounds like this is a it's almost like it reminds me of it's got a spiritual element to it, almost like alchemy or something. But it's like
It is
the
alchemy.
elites know about this and are using it to manipulate us for their ends.
Do you want to go into the spiritual background of this?
Yeah, yeah, sorry. Yes, let's go to that. Yeah.
Okay. I would say that, a lot of people are talking about that there are a lot of, uh, dark people in the world. I would say that as darkness is working, it's not so, like, people don't really uh, see it consciously. These people, most of us, like, who are doing things which is dark, we are not being aware of that. And that's the problem.
That's true.
Basically, there are not so many dark people in the world. However, darkness is working in a way that it is giving ideas to people. It is suggesting people to do things. And since we are creators, it can tell us to buy a plastic bag and throw it out, or these kind of things. And we are just doing it. So this is what is happening in science also. It is giving ideas to scientists, and with the best will, they are creating many, many different things. And the way these inventions, let's say, are being used or applied, that's a very unfortunate thing.
Okay. So are this is low energy patterns that are conscious, low frequency patterns. Is this some sort of negative energy being manifestation on Earth or something? I know this sounds southern. We're in like Alex Jones, David Icke territory, and I didn't expect it, but sure, why not?
Yeah, I don't want to go really deep into that
Okay,
because
if you don't want to go into it, that's fine. We can talk.
no, because I'm not an expert. That's why I would say, silly ideas, and that's just only my personal idea. But I have to say that based on the knowledge I learned based on this method and computer, I just started to understand why we are where we are, and
Right.
this is wonderful because that's what we need. We need understanding so that we can find solutions.
Okay. So how does electromagnetic radiation fit into this?
Electromagnetic radiation is something which is harmful to the human body, of course, even the suns. So it's, but you are meaning like electrosmog, or
Our health and quantum health, essentially.
yeah, it is affected and by that, and it is harmful. And we have a lot of patients we are protecting. We have different protectors and stones and these kind of things we try to use against 5G. And yeah, of course, it is harmful, but this is, all of these aspects. We have a lot of aspects which are harmful, and the problem is that they are just, reinforcing each other. So we have to deal with like what we did, what the inventor did was that he was narrowing down to a set of rules which are like doable by a person, so that we wouldn't go, you know, crazy about like the billions of aspects we should take care of.
Yeah.
But he was managing to go to the roots, and it is proven on my part that when you follow these rules, like all kinds of, like from that point on, by using the different water patterns, all kinds of diseases can be treated. Like I was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis. That's when I met with this system. And they told me that in 2 years I will be in wheelchair, in 10 years I will die. And it was 7 years ago, and I feel better than ever. We are you know, we are having autistic kids a lot, of course, because it's a huge problem. Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, you know, all kinds of, you know, they call them like, science started to put these different kind of diseases under one, you know, roof, which is the autoimmune diseases. But basically what they say, and this is what we have to understand, is that it is wonderful what they can perform with surgery, for example. It's unbelievable, and it's life-saving. However, it is us who are responsible for our own sickness. So with the autoimmune diseases, what science wants to send us as a message is that we cannot solve your problems. It is you who's supposed to, you know, gain sanity again and not self-destroy yourself.
Okay, so we have the element here of we have an ability where we can take responsibility using certain methods, the wisdom that quantum healing can give us to heal ourselves. But at the same time, there are these practices, widespread practices that are very detrimental, and either it's done through ignorance or malice. The reason doesn't really matter. The fact that it's happening is quite an issue. So we need to navigate that whole situation. Another thing you mentioned is geopathy and a water vein Hartmann grid. These two things that, well, not you mentioned. It's mentioned in Matrix Drops website.
Yes, it is very interesting, and you know, if a person understands just this aspect of health or existence, because let's say health is existence, like that's a problem when we separate these two. And basically all ancient civilization, tribes, wherever you go, even these days, if you just go to a place where are like really elderly people are around, and they still have the ancient culture, all of them have the knowledge about like these kind of harming effects, and they did deal with that. All these cultures have different kind of habits and traditions how to deal with that. For example, when they were building a tent, for example, for themselves, they were building the tent where the horse was sleeping, because horses sense these radiations and they don't sleep there. So what they see where the horse sleeping, and there where they were building the tent. And all the cultures have these kind of um, traditions. So what is really, really crucial to understand is that, or we just have to make a decision that, do we want to turn into um, a human being number 2 or version 2 and 3 and 4 with technology, and replacing ourselves with, you know, um, steel pieces and technology, or we want to understand that we are human beings and we are part of nature. If we want to be part of nature and we want to protect ourselves based on that, then we cannot avoid the understanding of that these harmful effects are affecting our aura, basically. And I can talk about it like for 5 extra minutes for how they do affect us, but I just don't want to go too far with that.
Honestly, this podcast is pretty out there, so you don't need to worry. As long as we're clear that this is just our perspective, which it is, this is a place where we share perspective, but it's not like, here are the hard facts. But I'm welcome to talk about where the science is on this, but we don't need to. I mean, if you want to stick to the science, I respect that. But we can, you can feel comfortable to explore beyond that if you like. You made a really interesting point, though, about the choice philosophically we have between the transhumanism of technology that's very divorced from nature, right? And the harmonizing with nature approach. And that's actually a key choice, I feel, at this time of awakening, because honestly, where's the way I'd put it is, where's the heart? Where's the love and light in, like, I suppose, soulless transhumanism, when we could instead be much happier and healthier, focusing on the aspects of science that are in harmony with nature and the divine. And what we're seeing now with quantum physics is that the divine and science aren't as divorced as we thought, right? It's actually the more, sorry, I'm interviewing you, but yeah, I feel we both have a sense of what the real choice is and which choice is preferable, but ultimately it's up to humanity as a whole, right?
I don't know. I was wondering about that, if we have individual choices or not. And I do believe in individual choice. As far as we are having the senses of a body, I believe that that is the area we are being responsible for. So of course we are being part of humanity, but we don't have the senses of humanity. And I do believe someone has, but I don't have the senses of humanity. I have my own senses, which means that this is my responsibility when I'm talking about humanity. So this is why I believe in individual choices. And I truly believe that, of course, those people who are believing in transhumanism, they have the best intent, and they have logic, and they have computing and science and everything. What I realized, why I was using the matrix drops computer, is that nature is not like a human logic. Nature is consisting of patterns, and patterns are not logically coming together. They are all being separate, different kind of patterns. So what I mean is that, for example, we have the table of elements, the matrix drops kind of table of elements, which is talking about the different spiritual aspect of the different elements. But if you think about in the table of elements, for example, manganum and iron are just next to each other, 1 electron difference, and they're just completely different, like completely different. Which means that when we think about transhumanism, and we think about like how wonderful it is when we have one logic, and we can be safe, because everyone is like everyone wants to control everything because of safety. That's the main reason of protecting ourselves and thinking about solutions. And the problem with that is that when you are in, let's say you are in one specific pattern, you your own kind of logic, but it doesn't mean that this is the logic of the world. It means it's your logic. And it is very dangerous to put the whole world under one logic. Like, for example, let's say under the wisdom of iron, or under the wisdom of radium.
Oh, yeah.
Because that's one logic. But when you talk about two different kind of elements, there is no logic. There is difference.
That's what transhumanism is like. I mean, metaphorically, it's like, okay, not necessarily with iron, but like, yeah, it's reducing us to less than what we really are as a whole. Because would you say there's a collective aspect to humanity where we're part of a larger system that is Gaia as a whole, and we're like the cells. So I suppose when it comes down to it, if you want to, I would say, if you want to have be at peace and enjoy your life, it might be advisable for us to use the wisdom that we are now starting to regain to be in sync with nature in a way that we can still have a high quality, we don't need to abandon technology to be in tune with nature. We don't need to be primitivist hippies just going into caves. Like we can be technologically advanced and have the being in touch with nature like we used to. And in fact, that's this awakening of consciousness allows us to be more than what we were before, even, right? I feel like we could miss that opportunity if we allow ourselves to be tricked or fooled or make the mistake of going down the true transhumanist path.
Yeah, of course. I think on my level of consciousness, I think that it's a mistake when we want to tell each other, how one person should think.
Oh yeah, of course.
So that's the problem, and what I'm always wondering about is that, okay, transhumanism and central mind, computer mind, what government people are mentioning these days very very frequently, that the central computer suggested this or that or something, and this is why we have to behave in this way or that way. My question is like, okay, and what is the pattern of that computer? Which pattern did they use? The iron, the manganum, or radium, or whatever? I'm using always the same elements, but of course there are a lot. Oxygen, everything, and what did they choose? What is the pattern of that computer?
Right. Well, you're aware of the chakras, right? And you're aware of these different elements of the different levels of consciousness, right? Going from all the way down from like the lowest levels, like low levels like hate, all the way up to like enlightenment, joy, and stuff like that, and everything in between. Well, if you end up having humanity dictated by, I suppose, cold machines, and whatever frequency or patterns they're working on would be low frequency, right? Wouldn't that make our lives low frequency?
You are asking me about like if we will be surrounded by, kind of thinking, but not really thinking, but kind of like cognitive kind of machines, and
Or if
they would lower our level of consciousness.
well, I suppose, or if we end up, our lives are, if the decisions are all based on what the supercomputer decides, and we just have to live with that, then the way we'd
Okay,
be living would meet that frequency.
I will mix some humor into this. Okay.
We need that.
Let's say that they tell the computer, then don't eat this or don't eat that because that will harm you. The computer will like do it like that. Okay, it is harming me, I don't do it. So self-protection, that would be, I'm sure, if I would make or create any kind of like lowest level of consciousness machine or anything which is artificial, I would surely tell, like, this is how you can save yourself. Please save yourself.
Right.
That would be the first. Now, if we just think about ourselves, that God gave us, the directions, okay, do this, but don't do that. And we are not even on that level. Not even on that level. And this is so funny because we are just fighting against the producers of sugar, let's say that, okay? But we shouldn't fight against producers of sugar if we wouldn't eat the sugar. If we don't eat the sugar, they will not produce it.
Oh, it's funny, isn't it? I mean, you get people, they care a lot about, well, our health. So they're like, okay, let's fight against the people who produce of sugar. Or you get people who don't like how animals are treated, that the animals be treated a very unhumane way in the agriculture. So they don't like animal testing. So they attack animal testing facilities instead of. I think the point is that a lot of it comes down to our individual choices, that we with responsibility for ourselves. And it's not just, even when we're aware of certain things, we externalize it instead of.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you are looking for raising consciousness, but if you think about like the holographic universe, it means that we have a universe inside.
Yeah.
And why do we go outside and tell another person to do this or that while we are, doing the same to ourselves? And I'm convinced, and this is my belief and my conviction, that whenever I do stop doing something about ourselves, about myself, my own body system, then it will stop outside.
The mirror effect,
Because
or the law of attraction.
mirroring, we are mirroring what we are doing to ourselves. So,
So if everyone were a lot more healthy with quantum healing or quantum health, if they ate better, if we were better with metals and didn't do so much trans fats and all these different factors, I'm sure there's other factors that you haven't mentioned yet that affect quantum health. If we do it harmoniously, everything will just be more harmonious, like in our behavior, our society.
yes, of course. We shouldn't manifest heavy metals in ourselves. And what is unbelievable and still, just hard to understand, and even the inventor was like sometimes surprised, because of course he had intuition how to put together this computer, and he had his own knowledge. However, when a computer is doing the same what a human being was doing before, and I would like really to emphasize that it's not the computer, because we are needed for the computer also. So it's not a computer as itself. We are the interface of that computer. So it is like kind of like a holistic view of what the computer can do for us and what we have as a creative pattern, and the package of creative pattern and intuitive abilities, how we can channel new information. So what I wanted to say is that it was a side effect, or how to say that, like just one gift that we got from this computer, that it can detect heavy metals in us. Medical science cannot, or they have to go into our bones and identify that there is a heavy metal. However, the computer can sense it, and not just sense it, but we can dematerialize heavy metals from our system. It's unbelievable. No one heard.
Dematerialize it.
Yes.
Could Gaia do that? Could we do that collectively?
Um,
Fizzles out of existence. I mean, maybe.
collectively not, because this is a creative pattern from the creator, which creator is respecting human will, free will. So what the inventor said, that yes, of course, we can solve all kinds of problems if we want, and we are asking for it. So this is why only those patients are, getting healed, who are following these, not rules, but, points, aspects, proven aspects of life. and they choose to be healed. They want to be healed. And then there are the miracles happening. So because someone asked the inventor, like, can we put the drops into a river, you know, because it's full with heavy metals. Like, can we dematerialize, you know, heavy metals in the river? And the inventor said, yes, we could, but I don't own that. You know, there has to be an owner who is asking for that. Please do that. So it's not a system which is controlling. It's not a system which is coming in and says, I will save you. It's the system through which we can save ourselves, our own will and decision. And we have to grow up to this.
Yeah, that's true.
And like during the lockdowns, we had marvelous, miraculous healings happening because you don't have to go out from your home to do this. What I'm doing is remote scanning, which means you don't have to be at the computer. You just call me and I make the scan through myself, through the morphogenetic field.
Okay, do you want to tell us about that then?
So it's, yeah, we have this field we share. This is called morphogenetic field. I don't know if you heard about it. It is like the same beings are sharing one field, one matrix through which they affect all of each other. We are just affecting each other. And whenever I am focusing on you and I put my hands on the scanner is seeing you, not me. And this is an unbelievable lesson to all of us, you know, and this is the proof of, you know, all the, you know, holy scriptures we had before and we have still, when they are saying that we become the average of people who we are focusing on.
Okay, so it's kind of like maybe a psychic field or a conscious, oh, so
It's
it's like conscious, the collective conscious.
it's for humanity, and it's, I don't like to call it psychic because you don't have to have any kind of gift for that.
Okay, so
It's very human. It's very,
okay,
it's fundamentally human, and we have it. And this is how
that's a
we are.
good point. Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's just fundamentally what it is to be human, and we all have that.
And during the last lockdown, a lot of people got healed at home. You know, I just remote scanned them. We just were talking through the details that the computer said. They said that this is unbelievable, how accurate it is. It is even can write out your, you know, like your returning thoughts or what you're struggling with, what kind of you know, problems you have, your relationships or something, and there are drops for them, and I just put the drops in a box and I send it by mail, and they are taking it and they get healed, and families become more, you know, much more you know, peaceful and quiet and cooperating and healthy. Unbelievable. So how it looks like that whatever is happening outside, we have 100% freedom to fix our own lives.
Okay, and there are other aspects of this as well. For example, it mentions on the Matrix Ops site that there's a bunch of things we eat, um, that or drink that, or things in them that also have an effect on our quantum health.
Yes, very much.
Would you like to go into that?
Yes, yes, I'm pleased by the question. Again, the inventor was narrowing down, you know, the list of these things because you know, everyone knows that you can go for 1,000 diets and you still have some new ones.
Yeah.
So basically, in the protocol, in the matrix drops protocol, only those aspects are being mentioned which are the root causes of all other kind of allergies. And let me say that there are some which shouldn't be consumed anyways, even if it would be healthy. For example, egg whites.
So we
Egg
shouldn't.
whites, egg whites shouldn't be consumed because it has a specific hormone which is growing this little chick in the egg. Now, the chick needs it in the first days of its life, but it doesn't need it anymore because when it grew, enough big, then it's done. So the egg whites has a specific hormone for this phase of life. Now, when we are eating this hormone, it wants to grow something in us, but we are adult beings. We don't need to grow anything.
Okay,
So
so if we want to have eggs, we have it just
yeah,
the yolk.
the egg yolk is unbelievable. It has all the unbelievable, marvelous nutrition in it. However, the egg white is not. It's just a hormone, just a growing hormone. So, for example, this is one aspect that we just shouldn't eat. We just forgot that we shouldn't eat.
Oh,
But there
oh
are a
man,
lot
I
of
can't have that breakfast now.
but there are a lot of other material which are not natural, like for example the genetically modified food, for example. It's of course it's not healthy, and you know uh, this is why I'm always talking about when we are chatting with anyone about this, that we are being frightened so much about this virus which is outside, but it is not a secret, but many very few people know about that the genetic modification is happening by a virus. They are using a virus to cut the DNA open so that they could put another part of DNA into the DNA of that plant or animal or whatever. So it's called adenovirus. And as you are eating a GMO food, you are eating the virus also. So we have a lot of viruses in our DNA already. We are inheriting all the viruses of our ancestors. And basically, the human genome, like most of the scientists say that it is 80-90% of virus genome. And we
So
have 10 or 20% of really human genome in it.
right, so it's corrupting our genetics, and the food itself isn't. I suppose the patterns within them become disharmonious. That when we just when we genetically modify, or they might do.
Everything we are in an age where the matrix drop system gives you the option to find out who you really are. We don't really know who we are because we are acting for the inner, all kinds of stuff we got. And I really do not want to mention the vaccination, because everyone is talking about vaccination, but we do have these things in us, for so long time, and we are just open to eat these food, even if they say that what is inside, it's an open secret. Adenovirus is an open secret. So it's the problem is that we should gain back our own wisdom, and we should be taught about this, and protect ourselves.
Yeah, the idea, I guess, is that it maybe the virus is a symptom of certain things we were doing to our health without realizing anyway, right?
We just should realize that what we do against ourselves, it's much, much, much more harmful than the government could do ever. We are killing each other with our emotions, with our behavior, with our words, uh, with the food we eat. And I don't want to say that what we give to each other, we eat ourselves. We are just living a self-destructive life.
Yeah, it's sad. But do you believe there's a an awakening happening that might be changing things for the better?
Yeah, all the time. When something is changing in one human being, through the morphogenetic field, it is, you know, affecting every one of us. It is raising all the consciousness. One person can raise the consciousness, of course.
So I guess what it comes down to is this rising of consciousness going to prevail, or is the transhumanism going to prevail?
I think the question is, and let me tell you this, the question is that when do we start thinking for why we came here? Because all the spirits came here to do something, to grow, to understand something new. And what we should be busy with much more, I think, is ourselves and not the world, because the world will take care of itself as it will. And as it turned out, you know, what does, let's talk about the Bible. What does the Bible say, or these holy scriptures? They say that the earth is a realm where all kinds of spirits are present.
Right.
So when we start with this and we assume that this is true, then can we really save the world? Or is it just a realm where we just have to learn ourselves, and then we get back to our own spiritual home? But we are not getting back to the same spiritual home. Everyone gets to his or her own. But we are here now to learn from each other, to see what that person does and what that person does, and then learning. And who do we learn from, for example? Who do we choose to learn from? Who are we focusing on? You know, it's like, what I really believe is that I don't, for example, let's see Bill Gates. Okay, he is a name, and people hate him or people love him. It doesn't matter. I think that it is very, very unhealthy focusing on someone who we hate.
That benefits them in a way.
I don't want to talk about them. I want to talk about nature, how nature is working. And nature is working in a way that I just described you. When I am focusing on you and I'm scanning myself physically on the computer, it is sensing me as I were you.
Yeah, that's fascinating. So I guess
Okay, but what does it mean?
we are one,
When
right?
a million people are focusing on Bill Gates. We have a million Bill Gates.
Oh no. Oh dear. Or like if you focus on,
You are
it doesn't matter,
become
anyone you focus on, you
anyone.
become them.
It doesn't matter if you hate the person or love the person.
But at least what we could be doing is embodying the patterns of higher emotions, higher frequency patterns, because then that's how we manifest, right? It is our choice. We can't just pin the blame on this, that, or the other. We all contributed towards this, right? We can't even pin it on like the Illuminati or whatever, right? I mean, to some extent, maybe we can, but we played a role in this whole thing for thousands of years or longer, right? All the oppression, all the disharmony, all the terrible things that happened. That was us as a whole. We all played a part in that, and that applies now as well. But at least now we have the chance to awaken to something new, perhaps more loving. And I suppose it's up to us to see if we get that.
You know, all of us have the option for that, especially now that we have the computer. We can start learning.
Yeah.
We can start learning how, like, what is really true, you know, because we can think about things. For example, science is not talking about what science does not understand. It doesn't mean that that thing is not existent. For example, I don't know if you heard about cold fusion ever. You never heard about, or maybe just the idea of that. But because science is not able to reproduce cold fusion, it is not talking about. But cold fusion is the miracle of our own human life. We are able to create any kind of elements from whatever we have, because we have the capacity of cold fusion.
Well, so
It means we can make helium from hydrogen, and we don't have to go into the sun.
that fundamentally changes, that would fundamentally change industry, right? And make it so that we could have, everything would change about the way we do things. Just like if we had much more awareness and application of quantum health, and just the possibilities are so much, things could be so much better. So I hope we take that opportunity. And you know what? I feel like we can come to a close here just because I guess we've summed up what it's about and we've come to a good note about how things better. So, did you enjoy the conversation?
I loved it because I saw that you became like, enthusiastic about that, and I love to see that.
Yeah. And so I hope you enjoyed it, listener, because I certainly did. And I'll see you in the next one. So, goodbye.